Chelsea, Manchester City, Liverpool, three of the fiercest teams not only in England but in the entire of Europe, separated by just 2 points on the Premier League table. Hello and welcome to the Football Parliament podcast, your one-stop destination for all your football debates, discussions, and opinions. And in today's episode, me, Manish, and Anshuraj are going to be taking a deeper dive into the three teams' start to the season, their style of play, their strengths, probable weaknesses, and our predictions for the remainder of the seasons. So let's start very surprisingly, somewhat coincidentally, that I've been joined by two La Liga fans in Manish and Anshuraj who support rival clubs, but you could say that they are part-time Manchester City and Liverpool fans as well, of what I know them, and I do support Chelsea, as you all know. So it will be a good discussion. Let's start with what the league table tells us, shall we? Let's start with Chelsea. One person who is a big critic of Chelsea's game over here is Manish. I've known him personally. So, Manish, your views on how Chelsea has started the season so far and what could be their probable weaknesses?
See, Chelsea's strength is arguably their defense, and they're a pretty, they're arguably the best defensive unit in Europe. But then what I find about them is their lack of directness, because they at one point of time the same pattern just going all and all around, and like they're not as direct as other big teams are. See, they're getting the results, but the results of course they are getting, but you have to be entertaining to a certain extent, which I don't find Chelsea enough entertaining to be, and I just get fed up watching Tuchel ball. And I guess the only weakness, potential weakness they have is that they're not as direct as other big teams. That's what I think. Otherwise, they've got everything covered. They've got squad depth, they've got defensive solidity, and they're an excellent tactician.
So you spoke about directness, which does relate to goals scored. It must be noted that Chelsea do have the second highest goals scored in the Premier League, just behind Liverpool. Anshuraj, do you agree with Manish's point, and do you think this could be a probable weakness with Chelsea?
I think in the match against Manchester City, in the 1-0 loss, I think that was the perfect example of how Chelsea, they weren't direct enough that entire match. They only started out with two attackers. And then I think at halftime, Tuchel brought on someone else so that they could have that stability in field. So that directness does, I think Chelsea need to work on that. But, defensively, I mean, they are flawless. There's nothing really much to comment on that. But I think they need to add that attacking, like unpredictability, as Manish, pointed out, that sometimes their patterns get too predictable and opposition teams can figure them out. So that unpredictability, I think Tuchel will have to allow his players to be their natural selves, and instead of playing in patterns, they can express themselves, take on men, and be unpredictable as in that sense.
Mentioned that Manish was a critic of Tuchel in comparison to what his results have been showing, because Chelsea fans all over the moon right now with us being top of the league. Another person that Manish is a big critic of and currently out injured, Romelu Lukaku. Since he's been injured, Chelsea have scored 4 against Malmo and then further on 7 against Norwich. Manish, jokes apart, I know that there's this constant Ronaldo Lukaku debates that have been going on since the last 2 seasons now. But jokes apart, very seriously, Chelsea with a false nine like Havertz, or Chelsea using an out striker like Lukaku?
See, with the false nine, they've till now they've faced two weak teams like Norwich, and see, I won't call Malmo a weak team, but they're not up to the mark. And if you see Chelsea squad, and so with false nine they're doing good, but then I don't know against big teams how they'll perform with the false nine. Like how exactly will they display with the Tuchel might have made few changes this season, isn't it? So and not very visible changes, but a few tweaks. So I guess once we see Chelsea against some big six team with using a false nine, a proper false nine, and no Lukaku, no Werner, then maybe we'll have a more better idea.
I think the Champions League final last season was a pretty good example.
No, that's why I said that. That's why I said that, because this season there might be some tweaks because he's got some players and all that. So
he's got Lukaku. So
yeah,
that's there.
Yeah.
And if I may ask you both, what are your realistically not hopes but predictions for Chelsea in the Premier League? I think top three, something out of top three would be rather very outrageous. First, second, third, according to you all, which one? Or if you want to just go very outrageous, starting with Manish.
Yeah, I think Chelsea might win the league, but I personally want Liverpool to win the league, Chelsea to finish second, and City to finish third because I have some agenda against City. Yeah.
Anshuraj,
I
what?
think Chelsea and City will ultimately fight for the title in the long run, because I think Liverpool will suffer massively during that AFCON period where
Is
they,
something that we will come to. So, yes, Anshuraj, Manish predicted Chelsea to come second. Anshuraj, what about you?
I think that Liverpool will be third, so it will
Okay.
be a direct fight between City and Chelsea because they're going to be relatively less affected by that AFCON period.
Yeah.
Chelsea will lose Mendy, but I think Kepa is decent enough to stand by
Yeah,
for
I
at
think he's
least five
bouncing back.
games.
All of these penalty shootouts and all will definitely boost his confidence. Moving on to Liverpool, since we've mentioned AFCON is somewhat under scrutiny now. It's not 100% confirmed due to the host nation's lack of infrastructure. It's something that can happen, more likely to happen. But if it does happen, the effects will be on Liverpool the most. If we think, Manish, what do you think their situation could be in the coming 2 months or so?
See, they'll obviously lose two of their main players, Salah and Mane. So then it's down to Klopp to work something out tactically and then find a way to fix it around, or to not, he can't exactly fill in those voids left by the two most important players, but then he's a genius tactician, so he'll figure a way out. That's what I think. That's what I expect of Klopp.
Anshuraj, what about you? What do you think the situation will be?
I think Liverpool will definitely suffer a lot. Losing currently the best player in the world is a hit to any team, and for Liverpool, I think it will be especially drastic considering they don't have adequate backup. Their only backup, I think, is Minamino in that winger kind of position. So, I mean, that's a pretty uh, large
Well,
gap between a
if we are
starting
being real
and a
to
backup.
ourselves, the three clubs that we are considering right now, I think we all must agree that Liverpool have the least squad depth of the three that we are
Yeah, yeah.
comparing right now.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
even right now, Chelsea in the month of December would be playing 10 games across 30 days. But Chelsea don't look as affected because even yesterday we fielded a defense which had two 22 years olds and one 20-year-old who's actually a right wing back who played at right centre back, and yet we managed to get the victory. And a similar thing could be seen for City as well, who played a lot of their squad players just could not get through to the penalty shootouts. But yes, Liverpool's biggest weakness would be their lack of squad depth, and they can make remedies in January, though. In the January window, what will be, we shall see. Moving on to Manchester City, then. Anshuraj, you being a part-time City fan, what have you made of City's season so far?
I mean, they've been pretty uh, good, but they've not as hit top form yet. I think there's still a lot to be desired of City, considering like what we've seen of City, especially in the 17-18 and 18-19 season, and for large stretches of last season, like how dominant they can be. Sometimes the opposition can't get close to them. So I mean, this season they've not really clicked into that form. I think there's still some problems in the that strike, like lack of striking option. But Pep Guardiola thinks that he can manage without a striker. In his recent interview with Sky Sports, he pointed out that whenever he loses his next game, the media are going to pressure him that he didn't buy a striker. But all said and done, I think Pep, that false nine does provide City with unpredictability, because that false nine can drop into midfield as well as provide them an extra body in the box. So I think Pep is playing his cards pretty well so far, and if he gets the City team to anywhere near those kind of levels, I think it's going to be a big headache for teams like Chelsea, Liverpool, and in Europe teams like PSG and Bayern, who might challenge City for the crown.
Manish, do you have any interesting views or opinions about City?
No, I totally agree with Anshuraj. said everything right, and I have the pretty much same opinion. Yeah, like he said that the lack of striking options, but Pep says that he can do without a striker and he can play false nine. So yeah,
Even
that's
looking
the
at the
only
strike,
weakness they have.
even looking at the striking options, it's not like any XYZ player can get into the City team as a striker because when you are a striker for a Pep Guardiola team, it does demand a lot more than just the final shot because this is how his team functions, and unless there is a striker who can tick all these boxes, which one could argue Harry Kane was, it won't be worth for City rather than what they are getting the result now out of the false sign. Two questions before we conclude. Which team do you all think has the best attack of the three? Actually, just rank the three teams based on how do you think they'll fare in front of goal this season, and conversely on the other end as well. Starting with Manish.
See, I think with the if see, like if we're not taking AFCON into consideration, or like if we're taking all that into consideration, because like I said, they're losing their two most important players. So of course, losing Salah, they're the best player in the world right now, then their main goal scorer. So it might affect them. But then I think Liverpool might score the most, and City to score the second most, and Chelsea to score the third most. That's what I think.
And what about the other end of the field? Goals conceded.
Chelsea would concede the least goals, I guess, even in the league. And I guess currently, what they've conceded 0.33 goals per game in the league.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think they're going to be the best defensive unit in the league, and followed by see, in City and Liverpool, I can technically decide at the centre back because both of their they have very good centre back depth, and like even if like if Joe Gomez is injured, so Konate can fill in. If so, so maybe Liverpool might concede the second least goals and City the third least goals. But it could be the other way around.
Anshiraj, out of the three, who has the best attack and who has the best defense according to you?
The best attack, sorry, I think Liverpool do have like a much more, much well gelled out kind of unit because Jack Grealish is still, trying to find his feet in that Manchester City attack. But so for that reason, I think I'll put Liverpool as the best attack among these three, followed by City and then Chelsea. On the other end of the pitch, I mean, it's no debate. Chelsea has the best defense out of these three. Uh, but Manchester City's defense, I think, is kind of pretty underrated in my opinion. Because their defensive stability is because of how they line up and their structure, rather than having like good individual players as such. If you put in any other defender from these three clubs, I think they'll have pretty much the same amount of impact. So I think City will have the second best defense, followed by Liverpool, which sounds pretty uh, outlandish considering Liverpool have historically been the better of the two defenses since 18-19. But I think that'll probably happen this season.
And final question, looking at the whole European level, the three teams, Liverpool won the Champions League, I think, 3 seasons back, if we consider this one as one. And City, of course, are yet to win their first ever one, increasingly starving. And Chelsea will look to retain one, which is will be quite a good feat. Which of the three teams do you all think will reach the furthest? I'm sorry, in the Champions League, starting with Anshul.
The furthest, uh, well, that's it really depends on the draws and stuff
It
and
does, it
how
does. I
lucky.
think it all depends on the
I
draw,
mean,
but
it's
yes,
very
if we
hard to
just
predict.
have to make a vague prediction then.
I mean, it's looking pretty likely that City will finish second in their group behind PSG because they lost the first leg. I mean, the first round set of games against PSG. So Man City might get a tougher draw in the first round itself. So don't be surprised if Man City get knocked out in the
The
last
same could be
16
said for
itself.
Chelsea as well, with Juventus being
Yeah,
3 points clear
Juventus
of
as well.
Chelsea right now. Yeah.
So I mean, taking those things into account, I mean, it's pretty hard. If you just take those into account, then you probably see Liverpool making a much deeper run. But Chelsea and City have pretty good big game credentials as well against opposition. Similar to at a similar level to them, they do perform pretty well. So uh, I think Liverpool will be the ones which delve further into the competition,
And
followed by
how far would that be for Liverpool?
they could reach the final, in my
All right.
opinion.
All right.
Yeah,
Manish,
they
what
could
do you
reach the
think?
final.
Yes, if we're taking those group stage standings into consideration, then yeah, Liverpool might make it the furthest out of these three. But I think Liverpool will make it to the semi-final, and maybe some underdog might make it to the final. And I think Bayern are favorites this year to lift the UCL.
All right,
So
then.
yeah.
And Manish said, told his favorites Bayern Munich. I think in the back of his mind, looking at the way his team is playing, not Liverpool, his first team, he would have that in his mind as well. Anshuraj, what about you? I don't think you can afford to say Barcelona right now.
I mean, it'll be a pretty big achievement if we get to the last 16 at this stage. But I mean, we could play in the Europa League and fight out, for the Europa League crown this year. So that would be a very interesting, kind of situation.
Even I personally feel that there is one underdog story every year. I think this could be a repeat of was it 2017-18 when Ajax reached the
18,
semifinals.
19.
18,
Yeah.
19. Right. So
Yeah.
this time
And
is
Ajax are
when
looking pretty strong this season as
yeah,
well.
the
So
Ajax are
yeah.
looking pretty strong this season. So this could be a thing, provided something bizarre like Eric Tahan going to United or something like that, which does seem unlikely. Does seem unlikely, but let's see. And that was it for today's video. A good, quick, slow, fun discussion with Manish and Shuraj about three of the best teams in England, arguably in Europe right now. So thank you for joining, and thank you to our viewers for listening to the end. And for more top quality content, keep listening. The Football Parliament podcast. Thank you.